All right, so what we're going to do for today, the first thing we're going to cover is basically how to link things. So there's various things that you're going to need to be able to link to your site. So you're going to need to link images to your web page. You're going to need to link other web pages, videos, any other kind of content that you're not writing directly into code will have to be linked, okay? So it's very important to understand how linking works, and this is one of those things that I find that students in the beginning very often kind of get incorrect, okay? There are two types of linking. There are what we call absolute URLs and relative URLs. Okay, it stands for Uniform Resource Link. But basically, it's how we link things. It's finding the file path. All right. An absolute URL means it directs to a specific location, no matter what. It's always that location. So a good example is when you go on a website or when you go on your web browser. Anytime you click and you type in like www.google.com, it doesn't matter what computer you're on, it's always going to a specific computer somewhere out there at that one address. Every web address is an absolute URL. Okay, but what you don't want is for that on your website, and I'm going to show you why. So let's say, let's minimize this, and we'll minimize this, and we'll minimize this, and this. Okay, so I have this website that I just made, Cone Site, that's what we're going to call it, okay, and I have the index right here. Okay, so if I open that up, you're going to see this is what I have inside here. Let's just link an image. We haven't really discussed this, but I'm just going to show you. So if I go ahead and I do an img, that's the image tag, and then we have to give it the attribute of source. I'm going to need to give it a source, okay? I'm just going to close it. So I got to put basically the file path here. If we do an absolute URL, it's basically going to look like this. I would go to, I'm going to say I have an image in my documents folder. All right. So mind you, this is in my desktop, right? On my desktop, right? So the documents folder is nowhere near this. It's in a different place on my computer. Okay. So I want to link this. I'm just going to right click. You don't need to do this. I'm just showing you. And I'm just going to copy as path. I'm going to use that here. All right. And I'm just going to paste it here so you can see it right there. It's kind of annoying because it does the extra little bits here. All right. And you can see it says C, users, cone, blah, 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 right? And I'm just going to save it. And if I were to open this, all right, you're going to see the picture does indeed work. That's great, right? So there it is. Yay. The problem lies in this. If for some reason I was on a different computer, if I hand you my website right now, okay, it's for one, it's got this, but the image that it's linked to is in my documents folder. So first off, you aren't going to have that image to begin with because it's not part of what I gave you. I didn't put it in the images. There is one in images folder, but that's not the one I'm linked to. I'm linked to the one in my documents folder. So first off, you're not going to get it because even if I give you this folder, the image isn't in here. But also, if you look at the file path, see how it says C, which you probably have a C drive. It's probably what your stuff's on. Users, and then cone. Yours isn't going to be cone. It's probably going to be whatever name your computer is, right? So your file path is not going to be the same as mine because this is specifically for that absolute location, okay? So this is not what you want. So if you see a long file path on any of your links or images, that is not going to work. The only time that's okay is if you're linking to like a website. So if I was doing an anchor href, right? And I did like HTTP // and then www.google.com. I don't think I did that right. That's okay because that's an absolute URL. So that's fine. That's like I'm linking to another web page. All right. That's not a big deal. But when you're linking images or you're linking to your own web pages, they should not look like this. Instead, what you would want to do is you want to make sure that on your website you put the picture in images, which I already did here. Okay, so it's images here. Now watch. When I go to type this in, instead of doing this, which is a very long one, I'm going to get rid of that, and I know it's going to be images. So there's images, and it automatically pops up for me too. So what it's doing is it's following a path of what we call a relative URL. So where this file exists, this index file, it goes, okay, is there anything named images? Here it is. And then inside of images, there's the image, okay? So if you look, you can see how it's basically just that relative URL. It's not looking for a specific location on my web page. It's in relation to this. Because I have other folders named images, but this images is the one that's right next to it, and this is called a relative URL. And the reason why this is better is because when I go to give this to you or somebody else, I give you this main folder here, right? Minimize all this. I give you this main folder, and all of it is inside of there. The image is in there, and when you go to open it, it's going to look relative to where the code is written. So it's going to look for images, and then so on and so forth. Okay, so that's a relative URL, and that's generally how you want to write things. Okay. Now you will also notice that you can write it different ways. So if it's in the same folder, you could literally just write exactly what it is. If it's in a folder below, so in our case it was images and then the image. So meaning that if I had this image right here, which would be incorrect to do, I would literally just have to write cone image and it would show up. But it's actually images, so on and so forth. Okay. And then there's ones above, and you can do ones. You can go further down, and you can go also up. Generally speaking, try not to go up. Don't go a folder above where you're working because that's kind of hard. It's 2 dots and a forward slash. You generally want to go in folders below, just because this tends to cause issues. Okay. Make sure there's no spaces and things like that. But that's a real important thing to know, and you want to make sure that all of your URLs are relative, unless you're trying to go to like a web page or you're trying to connect to like a Facebook account or something like that, because that is an absolute. But everything else that you are putting in there, you want those to be relative URLs.